I said to Grace, you're nervous? She said, I can't feel my hands. Thank you for coming, Grace. Looking forward to hearing your story. Would you like to use a handheld or this little sucker? Yeah. Okay. You put it in the right position. You tell me when you want me to go. I'll get you a glass of water. You happy there?
I think so.
You feeling better than you were a few minutes ago?
Yes.
Just a round of applause. It's been amazing already. Good. And let's flash up. Blame on the auto cue.
Your daughter has leukemia. The 4 words that would turn my world into a spirally black hole of fear and dread. Do you want to go to the next one? Yeah. I repeated these words in my head over and over again to help them sink in. This is a photo of my daughter Raya, just 10 days before she was diagnosed with T-cell acute lymphoblastic leukemia. Leukemia, my daughter, those words together hand in hand, as though someone or something had taken my daughter away from me. This girl had 90% of leukemia in her bone marrow. Left untreated, I was told she would die in a matter of weeks. Raya was 4 years old, and this was her first day of preschool. She was in her new school uniform, excited to start the school year with her brother and sister. But those 4 words held me hostage, with the realization that I was no longer in control. My daughter's life was no longer in my control. I had little knowledge of leukemia at the time, so when I heard those words, I assumed it was an automatic death sentence, that her days with me were numbered and Raya wouldn't see her next birthday. On this day, Thursday, the 18th of February, 2021, my hopes and dreams for Raya were shattered. Raya never attended another day of preschool. Instead, she was now isolated in the emergency room at Westmead Hospital, where nurses struggled to find her tiny veins to insert a cannula into her arm. My life flipped on its head in a matter of moments. I could no longer exhale. As a yoga practitioner and teacher, the breath was everything to me. I had spent 20 years practicing yoga where breath was everything. But on that night, my breath was stolen from me. When my oncologist told me that Raya had leukemia, the reaction in my body was instant. Fear engulfed me. I began to shiver uncontrollably, and I fell into a state of complete shock and disbelief. Warm blankets did very little to control the shivers that hijacked my body. I couldn't see the 4 walls around me. My mind became a blur, and the room was spinning. My oncologist was quick to inform me that 4 out of 5 children diagnosed with leukemia are cured. Did this provide me with any comfort or relief? Not really, but a little shred of hope began to show its face. What happens to the 1 out of 5? Could this be my daughter? That night, Raya and I slept at hospital and did not come home for the next 6 weeks. My husband was working here in Melbourne and my parents were caring for our older children at home. I was trying to comprehend the alternative reality that was forced upon me. I faked smiles around Raya all evening and was relieved when she finally fell asleep so I could try and process what was happening. I fell asleep from sheer exhaustion and then awoke at 2 a.m. Confused, I just wanted to pick Raya up and run, take her home and protect her. I took this photo at 2:07 a.m. I remember looking at Raya in disbelief. I couldn't fully comprehend what was happening. In a matter of hours, she was scheduled to have a central venous line inserted into her chest under a general anaesthetic. A central line is a plastic tube that goes into the main artery of the heart. This is where she would receive chemotherapy and would be the place all her blood samples would be taken from. So here I was at 2 a.m. looking at my pure and untouched daughter, not even 24 hours after diagnosis. And I kept thinking, what on earth am I doing here? I need to get out of here. I need to take Raya and run. I wanted to protect her, but I knew I needed to stay if we had any chance of saving her life. I also had this desperate desire to freeze time. I wanted to capture this moment where Raya was still untouched by treatment, by chemotherapy and radiation and medication that would soon enter her pure body. I wanted to freeze time so desperately, I literally began to contemplate ways to preserve her. If I could take photos, I could capture her looks. Videos would capture her voice and personality. But smell, how could I preserve her smell? I found myself smelling her skin and thinking I may never ever do this again. This could literally be one of the last times that I could bury my face into her neck. I looked at her gorgeous golden curls and knew it wouldn't be long before they would be gone. I was terrified that my beautiful baby girl was going to be a memory that I would hold in a photo frame on a wall, frozen in time, forever a 4-year-old girl, robbed of her opportunity to grow up. I managed to walk out onto the ward and a display of long-term follow-up patients caught my attention. I remember thinking, is this real? Are these people real? Do they actually get better? My knees gave way and I struggled to hold myself up. Never in my life had I experienced such deep-rooted, crippling fear. These pictures of survivors gave me a tiny glimpse of hope in my deep, dark hole. This is a roadmap of the protocol we were given when Raya was diagnosed. When you're given a leukemia diagnosis, things move really fast. The treatment plan that is provided is overwhelming, and day one looks like a tiny dot in a very long and complicated road to remission. It's like being pushed down a steep hill on a skateboard and you don't know how to ride. You're moving fast and you're trying to work out which way to go, what to do, and you need to learn how to skate and fast. So this is a photo of Raya, not even 24 hours since her diagnosis. My husband caught the earliest flight from Melbourne to Sydney, and he managed to see Raya moments before she was wheeled in for her first general anaesthetic procedure to insert her central line. Raya also had a bone marrow biopsy, which would collect a sample of her marrow from the lower back to test her leukemia levels. She had a sample of fluid taken from her spine to test if cancer had made its way to her brain. And she received the first of many intrathecal injections. This is a dose of chemotherapy into the spinal fluid to kill any cancer that could potentially be there. My beautiful, untouched daughter now felt like a science experiment. This was the first of 21 and still counting general anaesthetics that Raya has had to date. And this first one was the beginning of our new reality. I became the mum that no one wants to be. During Raya's treatment, many people have said kind words to me, commending me on my strength. "You are so strong" is a phrase that I've heard more times than I can count. My response is always the same. I have no choice but to be strong. Crumbling is not an option. I needed to be there for Raya, for my other 2 children, for my family. And strong is all I could be, and it's not like I had a choice. Believe me, there were moments I crumbled, moments I will never forget as the darkest in my life. I had an intimacy with fear that I had never known to exist, and I had to look it directly in the eye. I couldn't escape it. After 5 months of back-to-back treatment, Raya had been through 97 doses of chemotherapy. and had spent 83 nights in hospital. She still was not in remission. Why? This doctor simply didn't know. She was incredibly high risk. She went through all the protocols for leukaemia, as well as 3 high-risk cycles that included a special request for a drug in America, but remission eluded her. Our last hope for any chance of cure was a bone marrow transplant. You know that roadmap I showed you earlier? Well, bone marrow transplant is the last step on that map. There is no other treatment after that. The transplant had to work. And if it didn't, in the doctor's words, there would be nothing more we could do. Now, my husband and I had to sit through extremely difficult meetings throughout Raya's treatment, but this was certainly the most difficult. We had reached the end of the line. This was it. And transplant did not guarantee success. We were told by the transplant team that Raya's chance of the marrow transplant working was 50-50. If there were leukemia cells detected after Raya's transplant, there would be nothing more they could do. If she came out of transplant with no leukemia, she was officially in remission. But this was not a guarantee that she was cured, but it meant that we had hope. That 50-50 chance is the hope we lived in for months. On the 10th of August 2021, my husband Ben donated his marrow to our daughter. It was a very special moment, a very scary moment. The weight on his shoulders was heavy. Will his own bone marrow be enough to save our daughter? It all felt like a gamble. We were taking huge risks with no guarantee of the outcome. It was an intense time. Raya had to undergo total body radiation. This was by far the hardest moment of treatment for me as her mother. The long-term side effects of total body radiation are frightening, and I still struggle to accept that I had to put my daughter through that. However, losing her was more frightening. Raya was isolated to her room during her transplant period. She couldn't leave her room for 2 months. No open windows, no walks, no visitors, no takeaway food. Raya couldn't see her older brother or sister for 2 whole months. In the early days of our hospital stays, Raya would often sob herself to sleep, saying she missed her brother and sister. During the transplant, Raya was permanently attached to her IV pole, with several tubes connecting her to her central line. She was given all sorts of medication to treat any issues that arose and to prevent infections. Raya was fed intravenously as she stopped consuming food and drink for a few weeks. This picture is just her morning dose of oral medication that Raya would need to take during transplant. And this is a photo of Raya coming home from her transplant, finally reunited with her brother, sister, her grandparents. The first bone marrow biopsy to see if the transplant was successful was 2 months after my husband donated his bone marrow. There were no leukemia cells detected. Finally, our baby girl was in remission. Today we are a year and 3 months post-transplant. And her latest biopsy shows that she's still cancer-free. Raya had been given, we hope is her cure. Over the course of Raya's time in hospital, we spent our days together watching Bluey, colouring and making crafts. We covered her walls with her artworks and photographs which brightened up her room. Raya often looked forward to the visits by her play therapists, music therapists, her resident hospital school teacher, and of course the Starlight captains. These experiences are what she talks most about today, happy and positive memories of the hospital that I'm truly thankful. Raya's bravery is one I have never witnessed before. As a 4-year-old, she accepted and adapted to her new reality. Despite how sick Raya became, she found ways to share happiness and positivity with her roommates, nurses, doctors, and basically anyone who would talk to her. She loved dressing up in hospital, always finding new outfits to wear and strut around the hallways of the ward and hospital grounds. The nurses made Raya an honorary nurse, and she proudly still wears her badge around the house, telling everyone she's going to be a doctor or a nurse one day. When your child is born into the world, you hold dreams and hopes, desires for them. It only takes 4 words to change this, for your dreams to be shattered. Your daughter has leukaemia. Those 4 words change the path of Raya's life. Our lives will never be the same again. Raya will forever need to deal with side effects of chemotherapy and radiation that she had to endure to win the 50% gamble on her life. My hope for the future, and I can say this on behalf of every cancer parent that I have met on this journey, and there are many, is for gentler and greater treatment options for our children. That our cure rate is not 4 out of 5, but it's 100%. That we have access to world-leading treatments in Australia, and the more options we have for treatment, the greater the chance of cure for our children. This is a snapshot of the treatment Raya has received to date. What strikes you in this snapshot? Perhaps its enormous amount of chemotherapy, the total body radiation, or is it the 46 blood transfusions she needed to keep her alive? Perhaps it's the 145 nights in hospital in the span of 8 months. Tonight, I have shared with you just a glimpse of Raya's story to give you an understanding of what childhood cancer is like for families. What it is like to have a diagnosis like this and how the world as you know it can be changed in an instant. I also share Raya's story to give hope. Hope to families who share a similar diagnosis. Hope that there is life at the other side of treatment. My speech would not be complete if I didn't acknowledge the families who had fallen in the 1 out of 5. The children who did not make it through to the other side. The children who fought incredibly hard, showing bravery, strength, and suffering through treatment, but it wasn't enough. And it's not because they didn't fight. It's not because they weren't strong. It is because there wasn't treatment for them that worked. It's important to recognise that it's the ongoing treatment and commitment to this treatment and treatment options and protocols that gives children like Raya a chance of cure. As part of Raya's treatment, we were invited to participate in a medical trial. It was here that my husband and I realised that the life-saving treatment that Raya is receiving today is because of the many families that have been here before us. If Raya was born 30 years ago, I would be telling you a very different story tonight. I honour all those families who underwent such difficult treatments and those whose children are now in frames, photo frames, frozen in time with only memories to hold. Throughout Raya's treatment, I would remind myself to one day share with Raya how it was her strength and her incredible ability to undergo such invasive treatment with such acceptance and resilience, and that's what kept me strong. Raya, it is your bravery that helped me be brave. I am so proud to be your mum. I'm so proud to be here tonight sharing your story. And to everyone here tonight, having listened to our journey, you are now part of our story. A story that continues for Raya and other families thanks to clinical trials. But don't just take my word for it. It is with great pride that I introduce you to my daughter, Raya Teresa.
How old are you? 26.
6 December 21st.
December 21st. So that means you get presents on the 21st and
Christmas.
25th, 4 days later. It's a pretty good week, isn't it? How old were you when you got sick?
4, then I turned 5.
And what did the doctor tell your mum and your dad?
The doctor told my mum and my dad that my cells weren't working good.
And what did you have to do to get them working
They
good?
had to I had to go into sleepy doctor, and I had to go into I had to get blood test, needles. So I had to have a mini central line bio.
So how many days do you think you've been in the hospital since you were diagnosed?
100. I think. I don't
Scared going in?
First, when I first got in the hospital, I was, or when I wasn't. When I got into the hospital, I wasn't scared.
How brilliant are the doctors and the nurses?
Brilliant. 100% good.
100% good doctors and
Yeah.
nurses. So every one of these beads represents.
When I was in hospital.
So you might have a blood transfusion, you might go and see a doctor, you might go and see a nurse. Do you spend any nights in hospital?
Lots of nights. This is a happy day. I'm not sure which happy day it was.
Show the camera the happy day. See that camera over there? Yes, happy day.
Happy day.
So the yellow are happy days.
Yellow or happy days.
Your dad's had a big role in your recovery. What's he given you of his?
He gave me his cells to help me get better.
So bone marrow transfer.
Yeah.
So did your dad have to see a sleepy doctor so he could have an operation? He did, didn't he? And you had good news recently.
Yes.
What did the doctors tell you?
The doctors told me that my cells were working good.
So you're in remission now?
Yes.
What does that mean you can do?
That means I can go home and do fun things. Like go to the park, play with my sisters and my brothers, watch iPads, watch TV.
Things that normal kids do.
Yes.
It's pretty much a wrap.
Yes.
Anything else you'd like to say?
Thanks for giving tonight so other kids can get better like me.
Thank you, Grace, for sharing your story. Incredible. So we're about to have dinner, and this is the only thing I'm going to be very forceful on tonight. No one is allowed to say anything until you've filled out your pledge form. Not even giggle, shut the fuck up. But this is the only part of the night that I insist you do what I say. So I want you to think of a number. Then just add 50% to it.
Because the reality is, whatever number you think of isn't going to do any damage to your bank account or to whatever you do in the next 30 years. But what might do is save Raya and the next Raya and the next Raya and the next Raya. So don't say anything. There's a pen in front of your plate. You all have a pledge form in your envelope. No talking. Just write out a number that makes you feel uncomfortable. Submit it, and then start talking.